We are live. Sheldon, nice to have you back. How's everything been
Glad
with
to be
you?
back. Lots of interesting changes, and like the title says, in the housing and the real estate side. And I've been discovering a lot of interesting statistics in general. I've been in a few webinars for mortgages lately, so I had to do lots of reading on some interesting updates. And this is still, fortunately, a really great time to look at buying a home.
Yeah, and those some of those changes, like for the longest time, they stated it was just going to be for the uninsured mortgages, so people with 20% down. And then it was just like a few days before these changes took effect, they just walked out that no, it's going to affect everybody now. If you're getting a mortgage, it's going to affect.
Yeah, and let's clarify what that is, because even people that probably have gotten mortgages recently still may not really understand what is the difference between an insured and an uninsured mortgage. So having an insured mortgage means you're putting anything less than 20% down. So you could be putting 19.99% down. It's insured. And the insurance protects the banks. It protects the lender that's lending you the money. And the government has this in place, the finance minister, so that if anything was ever to happen with the housing market, the banks would not collapse. So it's kind of a trade-off. If you put less than 20%, you do get an insured mortgage, and you do have to pay premium, but you get a little bit better interest rates. If you put 20% or more, instead of doing 25 years, you can put it out to 30 years, so you can stretch that amortization out, soften that payment a little bit if you'd like, but your interest rate ends up being a tiny bit higher, but you don't have to pay that insurance premium. So I do want to clarify that, because it's something I always have to explain to pretty much every client. The good news is that CMHC, which is the government one, is not the only player in the game anymore. There's Canada Guarantee and Genworth. Genworth, I think, just changed their name to Segway or something. And they are privately owned, and they're a lot more flexible. So people that still want to get into the market and sometimes need some flexibility or exceptions on their approval, it's a little bit easier to get it done through them. But still, it is affecting all of the mortgages, and it's impacting people's purchasing power in Ontario, probably around the $40,000 range, roughly. I would say it's probably somewhere between $30,000 to $45,000 buying power that it's affecting, which means that you typically have to make maybe $10,000, $20,000 additional per year as a household.
And how have you seen it affecting the mortgage side of things so far? Like, I know it's still only a few days into it, but is it only affecting the people that are new applicants, or what about people who had previously gotten a pre-approval or anything like that?
Yeah, so anybody that was already approved under the new rules, if they already have that approval in place, they're good. One thing I'll point out is that if you got approved through one lender and you decided, you know what, for whatever reason, I'm not going to use them, I'm going to start a new application with these other guys, you'll then be qualifying under the new terms. So if you have an approval in place, you're very likely going to want to keep that, unless you don't need that additional buying power, and maybe you can get a cheaper rate somewhere else. But doing any new application after June the 1st means that you are under those new rules. And they also have made some other changes, though. We have that government program. It's almost kind of fishy. Makes me wonder if they're making those rule changes just so the government can get in on people's equity. But there's the home buyers incentive through the government, the federal government of Canada, where they will give you between typically 5% or 5 to 10% if it's a newly constructed home towards your down payment. Now, that does mean that the government then owns a part of your house. Any increases in the value of your home, they are also benefiting from those increases. So they've actually made some changes that are a little bit more beneficial to people, where it used to be a maximum income of $120,000. And now it's a maximum income per household of $150,000. So, there's usually more than one change that's happening in the game, because they're trying to do different things. But Right now, anybody after June 1st is everything under the new rules. Anybody that already has an approval, they're good as is of the rules at that time.
Okay. So we have our first question here. It's from Carlos, and his question is it affecting if you're refinancing as well?
It is affecting the refinancing as well. So, a lot of people are looking a lot of different reasons to take equity out for their home. It's the best time ever to look at refinancing. I think it's potentially a little bit less impactful because the value of homes are very strong right now. So it's tougher for a buyer. It's a little bit better for somebody that's looking to do a refinance because it might mean that they can take out a little bit more money because of the home prices, but just a tiny bit less because the qualifications. So it is a great time to refinance if you are truly focused on building wealth, and it's not for every scenario. There's never any blanket financial advice because every situation is different, but it's a great time to consider taking out money from your home and putting it anywhere else because they're historically low rates ranging from, downwards of 1.4% for a variable, of just over 2% for a fixed. And you can put your money almost anywhere, even in TFSAs, and make more money than that. So it's a great time to take out equity. And it is, with the home values, it's a little bit better, but it does affect everyone. So whether you're doing a renewal, a refinance, or a purchase, you are impacted by those rules.
Okay. And then who do you find, like with Gemba, like the applications that they're seeing, is it more on the refinance side or is it more on the buyer side? Like, are they looking to buy or refinancing? What are you seeing more of?
So usually it would be, pretty close, even split. I would say the vast majority are purchases these days. The average millennial, so 25% of millennials, 1 in 4, has drastically moved up their timeline to buy, and probably some of that has to do with COVID. Maybe people don't want to be in apartments right now, or I don't know what it is, but the buy market is going crazy. That I would say it's the vast majority of what we see. It's about 80 to 85% of our business right now. And again, renewals is something that you really don't see much of because unfortunately people don't shop their mortgages at renewal very often. They just sign that document over.
Yeah, I can see that because a lot of times they don't know. And that's why, like, the first video we did, it was just shedding light on the different options that you have out there. Because so many people I would run into and like qualifying them to make sure like they got a mortgage pre-approval and everything. A lot of the times they just went to the bank that they dealt with and just dealt with them. And so I'm assuming like the whole refinance or the like just the renewal time, exactly the same thing.
Well, and that's a good point that you mentioned. So while qualifying has become more difficult, I'm really glad you brought up that point. That doesn't mean that it has to be equally an equal purchasing power with any lender. So we have a naughty habit in Canada because we have significantly less competition than the US. The US has tons of independent banks. We kind of just have that trust for the big banks where wherever we bank since we were 16 years old, that's where we'll keep banking unless we have a really bad experience, and then we shift everything somewhere else. When you're locking yourself into the conversation with only one financial institution, you're limiting your options because there are special programs that different lenders have. Sometimes one bank doesn't want as many mortgages on their book during that time. They're trying to cool their books, and another lender might have some great programs, some cash backs, some special incentives, self-employed programs where you might be able to qualify for 10 or 20,000. And one example of that would be there's a few lenders that will let you do count child tax as income. There's some lenders that if you have a rental property and you typically, with most lenders, the vast majority, you can only use 50% of your rental income towards your qualifying. There's a couple that will let you do 75 or 100% of the rental income on qualifying. So having a conversation with a mortgage broker doesn't mean that you're telling your bank that you're not going to do business with them or that you're switching. It means you're making sure that you're most intelligently informed. You're gathering all of the information. You're looking both ways before you cross the street to make sure what the best move is. So, even though there is some limitations there, having a full view of what lenders are offering across the more than 30 lenders we have across Canada, a lot of great lenders and their special programs, is important because it might make the difference between something that you're willing to settle for to get into a home versus something that you really are in love with and more happy about the decision.
Okay. And are you seeing the same, because you would see the competition that there is right now in the Greater Toronto area, are you seeing the same real estate competition like Canada wide or the areas that you guys are focused on?
Right across Canada. So we do a lot of business in Toronto, Halifax, British Columbia, mostly in Vancouver and Surrey, and a lot in Calgary right now, Edmonton, Grand Prairie. So even I think Alberta was one of the markets that was a little bit more down for a while because of the downturn in the oil, but all of the markets are pretty crazy right now. Over here where I am in Halifax, my business partner's in Toronto. I'm in Halifax. It's crazy. A lot of houses are going well over. I did read this morning that the condo market in downtown Toronto is down 19%. So I personally am a believer of buying on the outskirts of those major hubs. So one of those places on the outside of Toronto, downtown Toronto. So, Oshawa, Ajax, somewhere like that. And just buying outside of those major cities, I think is a great purchase right now, but the market's going crazy everywhere right across the country.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people's preference right now is to buy outside of Toronto, and that's why it's been so nuts. And I've been talking to different realtors in different markets like Mississauga and Oakville, and they're saying it's starting to slow down a little bit. And I'm seeing that a little bit in Durham, where properties aren't always selling when they're being listed. Like most of them still are, but you're seeing more and more of price changes and then like terminations, and then they just relist at like their realistic price that they want. So I'm curious to see what happens in the coming weeks or months with that, especially with this government changes that took place just 3 days ago. So yeah, I'm really curious to know about that.
Well, a couple of interesting statistics I was talking about in a webinar the other day, just in relation to Canada and the US. So Canadian home prices have increased by 278% in the last 20 years, and incomes have only increased by 105%. US prices, home prices have increased by 106%, and incomes have increased by 93%. So our home prices have gone up significantly more, and that can make it a little bit scary, but that also shows that it's a great investment in Canada. A lot of people from the US are coming up to buy here, which I think sometimes is driving the price up, but they're putting a lot of taxation on foreign buyers now. And while the rates are expected to start increasing soon, people may feel a little bit, like I say, discouraged, confused about what happened with June 1st, a little bit tougher stress test, but they are hoping it's going to cool the housing market, make the houses a little bit more affordable, but they haven't increased the rates yet. So this is a good time still to buy. Again, it can never give blanket advice for anyone, but whether you're looking to refinance, take equity of your home, look at buying your first home, rates are still at a massively historic low. And it's, even if you're not sure that you want to do it, and I'm curious about your side, I'll give my opinion on my side. Have a conversation with a mortgage broker. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that weren't sure if they were ready to buy a home. They were kind of thinking about it, or they didn't even think they would qualify. They had misunderstandings about their credit or what qualifying was. And only 3 months later, we had them in a house where, they were floored that it could happen. So having conversations with, especially your mortgage broker, because you want to know that you can qualify before you usually have much of a conversation with a realtor. Have those as early as possible. Any good mortgage brokers shouldn't be complaining if you talk to them early, no matter how early it is, 1-2 years even, because they can keep you in contact with you. They can keep you informed. I love having those conversations early because it means we can really guide people to intelligently prepare, and they can have a lot of good ducks in a row. So how early, other than I guess obviously you want to have a level of knowing that the client can actually shop, how early should they be talking to a realtor in your opinion?
I feel like once they figure out they're like, I think it goes hand in hand. You got to figure out what you qualify for and that you can qualify for something, but then you also got to talk to a realtor to find out which areas could have what you're looking for. And some people, being on a goal line is very important. Others is they just want to be walking distance to a lot because they might not right away. So I feel like you kind of have to figure them both out at the same time. But if you had to start with the one, I would say the mortgage broker first to find out your amount, and then you can shop your area from there.
So that's always if somebody comes to me, let's say they're thinking of buying in 6 to 8 months, they want to have the conversation with me, because for a mortgage broker, it's never too early. Again, we can intelligently inform you, help you find out what that right time looks like. If they get qualified, let's say they're looking great, they can buy that range that they're looking for. Is 6 to 8 months beforehand too early? Is it 3 months before they want to close? Like how many months before they're ready to move into a house should they engage a realtor, assuming that they're pre-qualified?
I think like the more time you have, the better, because like I have people that their plan isn't to move for 6 months, but they wanted to follow the market. And I've had it where people reached out last year in like August, September, and I would send them listings, figure out exactly like what's important for them. Is it the schools, the transportation, being close to everything, important. And then so we've been following those areas so that by the time they're actually ready to buy, it's not like the whole learning experience. They'll be able to follow list price versus sale price. And for a lot of people who are just entering the market and they're all excited to buy something, it's a hard time for that, because the reality is you might be, I think on average right now with people I'm helping it's about 6 offers before they have an accepted one. So it's like the expectations of that, where if you've been following it for 6 months, that's happening. But if you haven't and you reach out, you're ready to buy now, and then you're going to look at homes, you might fall in love on your first home and get smoked when it comes to offer table because you've had somebody that's written 10 offers. Because like I have people that the best was just recently, it was last week, where they actually got their first offer we wrote together accepted. And I
saw that post you made. Yeah, you said it was a rare occasion where you just got to write the one.
Well, yeah, and so I was worried they're going to think I was just BSing them with how competitive the market was right now. But it was good. It was good that they, it was good that they got lucky. But at the same time, it was like, that's so rare that that's happened. Like since September, I've only had 2 people, like that person, one of them, where they've gotten like their first or second offer. Everybody else were in 6 to over 10. I've had one person over 20, and it's a lot of house shopping, a lot of offers, and a lot of heartbreak. Because when you're buying a house, it's not something that's disposable. You picture yourself living there. So every time you get that rejection, it hurts. And that's where you have to be a little careful, because some people, once they start writing so many offers, it's almost like they stop looking for the perfect house. They just start looking for the house that would suit them. Not even suit them, that they can live with. And that's just not always the best way to go about it.
Yeah, so I guess that makes a lot of sense then, is you can almost, sooner the better that you engage, as long as you're qualified. Now, I guess one thing I should point out that's super important in that conversation, somebody comes to talk to me on the mortgage broker side, let's say I qualify them for a $600,000, and then they go and talk to Brad, and they want to, start getting those emails so they can start to look around at something that's attractive to them and maybe make that move. You have to, and especially if there's a longer time period, you have to make sure that there's no drastic changes to your finances.
That's important.
I can't tell you how many people have lost their opportunity to buy a house because they went to buy a new car and take on a car payment, or they upgraded their car unnecessarily, and that $100 or $200 a month payment is just the same as the implications of that stress test. Your debt ratio, your income versus the payments you have going out every month, gets impacted against that new qualifying rate. And it's the same thing anytime you take on any extra payment that's going to show up on the credit bureau, any additional money that you put on your credit card or your line of credit. So you could end up, shopping around for $600 for how many months with you, and then only to realize that you only qualify for $560 maxed out, really making the stretch. So I do want to share that Vehicles are super easy to qualify for, weirdly easy to qualify for. Sometimes I question whether half of these dealerships are even following the rules of qualifying people's debt ratio, because I see people with walking out with like massive vehicle payments. Vehicles are super, super easy to qualify for. Get your house first. You'll be able to get pretty much any car that your heart desires after the fact most of the time. But it's very strict debt ratios when you're qualifying for a house. So don't make any increased payments. And if you can pay down some of your debt, if you qualify for me with me for 600,000 today, and you pay down a little bit of your revolving debt, your credit card, your line of credit, stuff like that, not loans because they're a fixed payment, then you might end up qualifying for a little bit more, and you might want to pulse check that again with a mortgage broker.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Vehicles are the number one mortgage killer.
I can picture that. Yeah,
people think that when they have a good credit score, they can just kind of go buy what they want, but debt ratio is equally or more than important than your credit score, because credit score, you can usually find some lenders that are a little bit higher rate that are still willing to work with you, but debt ratio gets too high and it's done.
Yeah, and it gets tough too when you're moving in somewhere and you have furniture, no appliances and stuff like that, because you can't necessarily go and just go buy them on a credit card or open a store credit to purchase it that way. So it's kind of like get your mortgage and then buy all the stuff you need to put into your house.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And I've seen people do that where they went out and bought a bunch of furniture before their house closed. Okay, so that's another important point. So even if your mortgage is approved, if the bank has the right to check your whole file again and re-pull your credit up until the day of your closing. So even if you're fully approved, you've supplied all the documents, everything's done, if they want, they can pull your credit again. They can see that you have got $5,000 worth of furniture at the brick, and all of a sudden your debt ratio is at a line, and they actually can't do it. They can't do it both because of internal policies and pressure that's put on them by the finance minister to make sure that they're lending within your affordability. So, all of those things, do everything after you get the house, because that's the strictest one, and probably a lot of those things you're not going to have a tough time achieving after the closing date. So that's can be, I mean, geez, that would be so that it's one thing I guess for the client, mortgage broker, and realtor too. I mean, that's a lot of time for us to spend, and that's why we want to be able to have those conversations early, so we can give you that guidance not to have anything that you don't need to have before you close that house.
Have you had that happen where people have changed their finance situation and had to try and manipulate a bank or try and make something work when they've done it?
Yes, and we've been lucky in most cases. There's a couple times I've seen people, and they were people that called us really early. I always give that advice on the first call, but I think you have to regularly send people email reminders just for them to remind, because we all see that shiny new car and the 0 interest rate and all these things, and those things are always going to be available. We've usually been able to finagle our way out of it, and I hesitate to even to tell that, because I don't want people to think, well, my mortgage broker will get me out of it. But usually we would have to switch lenders to somebody that's willing to maybe accept a little bit higher debt ratio or relook at that file. That we've had one where a lady bought a bunch of furniture, like I said, at the brick. That lender wasn't going to do it anymore. We now have to go out, search frantically at the last minute for another lender, put all that documentation over again. If you get a certain broker, and they might charge you a fee for that extra work because they're doing now double the workload in order to save your butt from a bad decision. So, yeah, beautiful, Carlos. So it's very true that they will. That's really common now. Mortgage fraud used to be way more common than it should be. They've really tightened up on that. They always are reaching out to call your actual employer. They will make sure that you're actually full-time, permanent employed, not on probation. There's really no point in not being totally forthright with your mortgage broker up front, because that's just going to waste your time. You're going to end up finding out something different once we get the right information, and we will somewhere. And that's not our goal to be like, oh, we're going to catch you, but it all comes out in the wash. This information is available out there, and everybody's doing their due diligence. And certainly, it's tough on a realtor to end up going to you and thinking that, it's tough on the seller as well. The seller, I mean, you could put yourself in a tough situation. You end up waiving all those conditions, and then, they call and hear the wrong thing from your employer, or, you make a small change to your finances, like I say, and all of a sudden you could be in big trouble with the seller. So having, professionals, people that have been doing it for a long time, and that's another reason I'll mention, and I'll carefully say this because I don't want to, put everybody in the bank in a pigeonhole, but I've worked for two large, big banks. The training there is not always spectacular. They can often be a little bit more sales focused because of their scorecards. We've seen this in the news over the years. So, you won't always get as much insight. There's a lot of great people that work at the big banks, don't get me wrong. And yes, just to answer Priyanka, they're not just allowed, they're mandated to call. So it's not the banker that you deal with that you submit it through that helps you. Your banker at the bank has to submit to an underwriter. So there's that level of separation to make sure they're not pushing things through that they shouldn't. And it's the obligation of the underwriter to, it doesn't even matter if you get a job letter. We receive the job letter in order to get that paper trail documentation for audit with a lender. But then they actually have to call the person's name that's at the bottom of that letter, and they have to actually speak to them. There's a series of questions that they ask them to verify your employment, your salary, you're not on probation, etc. Can banks call your employer after approval and before closing? So after approval, it's done. They're not making any phone calls after approval. If for some reason, perhaps somebody went in and said, hey, I'm Priyanka's friend, she put in a totally fraud application, then they might. But really at that point, after closing, they've done their due diligence. I was thinking after closing. So they can't call after closing. They could, but 99.9% of the time they wouldn't. After approval, before closing, absolutely. They can, and they're mandated to do that internally by their own internal audits. So count on them calling your employer for sure.
Yeah. We have Sheldon for another 15 minutes. So if there's anybody out there with mortgage questions, he's your guy.
Any questions at all? There's no silly questions. Mortgages are, it's a big, complicated beast. It's the biggest purchase you'll ever make in your life. And I think, Brad, you got our information up here somewhere on the Facebook post. And even if you guys aren't looking at buying a home and you just got some questions because you're not really sure, I'm always happy to answer questions. I don't roll my eyes, be like, oh, is this person wasting my time? Do you actually want to buy a house? I'm passionate about what I do. I love sharing the information. If you never buy a home and you just want to fire me some questions, or never buy a home through me and you still want to get some questions answered, get pre-qualified outside of the conversation you've had with your bank, even if you end up going back to them because you want to make sure you're in the right position when you go and talk to a realtor like Brad. I'm here to give the same advice I'd give my own dear mother. I love to give people good straight shooter information and make sure that they're getting the right information. It's just as bad to go to anyone, your bank included, and find out that you qualify for less than you thought. There's been a lot of occasions, Brad, and I think that you and I have even seen this in the past, where somebody goes to their bank, they told they're qualified for this, but they actually only qualify for this, and you don't want to be thinking that you qualify for 600, making an offer for 600, getting your hopes up, breaking your own heart because your bank didn't really do that pre-qualification effectively. And another thing I think I should clarify really quickly, the hugely misunderstood term is pre-approval. Pre-approval is not what everyone thinks it is. It is what everyone thinks it is at like 2 or 3 banks out of the 30, 2 or 3 lenders out of the 30. Most of the banks and lenders will not actually do a full credit check. They'll take your information verbally. They'll do kind of an overview of the numbers. Essentially, what's usually happening is called a pre-qualification. A pre-approval means we've checked your credit, we've actually collected the documents to verify your information, and this is a good file, assuming that there's nothing wrong with the house and the appraisal and the inspection go okay. So, if you hear the words pre-approved, you're pre-approved, make sure that you've actually gone through the process, that they've actually checked your credit. Otherwise, it's only a pre-qualification. And if it's an awesome person that maybe they've gotten you to check your credit on Credit Karma, you don't have any collections, it's showing you that you have over 750, something like that. If you're dealing with somebody experienced, they should be able to give you a very confident pre-qualification where you can go in strong. But just be wary, because the term pre-approval is very loosely used and thrown around a bit too much. And there's been countless occasions, specifically with one bank, which I won't mention, where I've had clients come to me furious saying, this is what I thought I was qualified for. I wasn't after all. Can you do this properly for me? And we put together a pretty beautiful information package and summary in point form that we share with clients, so they can kind of understand all of those extra hidden costs, closing costs, appraisal, stuff like that. It's nothing huge, but certainly things that you want to be able to work into the budget so that you know what you're working with going in.
So what do you think, because right now it's kind of like, if you have a conditional offer, you have to be so much higher than any other firm offer for the sellers to really consider it. What can people do to protect themselves so that when they are writing these firm offers, that they're actually able to back that up?
So you mean waiving all the conditions?
Yeah.
So that's something, it's a delicate dance. You want to be in intimate conversations with your mortgage broker and your realtor anytime you're doing that. And there's a lot of people doing it right now. I've seen people that really don't qualify at all right now that say, I don't care, I want to get into a house, I'm going to go ahead and make the offer unconditional. You tell me what I need to change in my finances in order to make this happen, because the closing is not for 6 months away. And then I'm telling them they got to pay off $40,000 in debt, do this and that, and whatever else. A lot of people are looking to go in, no conditions. The key is really just, again, to have a very accurate understanding with your realtor, with your mortgage broker, as to whether in this case it's going to be a reasonable gamble. It's always going to come down to the client making the end decision. As the realtor and the mortgage broker, I can tell you, the likelihood of you running into any potential hiccups for your very unique particular scenario with the lender. And you as the realtor, Brad, can give people the inclination and the detail around, well, what is how urgent is it for you to consider going in firm, and all of the rest of these variables. So it is, again, just a delicate dance that you want to play. You want to be very careful about it, because, I typically tell people you want to make sure to have enough cash to pay for that house if you're going to go in firm. But that's just, being super conservative and safe. And I mean, we're having people do it on a regular basis now, because that's the type of market we're in. We just had a client that the appraisers are so busy right now. They were supposed to close on the 3rd. That's been pushed all the way out to the 22nd, just based on appraisal. So we bent over backwards, got the approval in like 3 days, which is very, very untypical right now because lenders are very busy. And then all of a sudden, the appraiser's not going to have it done for quite some time. And they're going in with no conditions, assuming that nothing will be found wrong with the house. So there's a lot of variables in play when you're thinking about going in firm. It doesn't mean that there's never a time to do it. Sometimes that's, a gamble people are willing to take, and it could make sense for the scenario. But the key is to just be making sure to have a good conversation with the broker and the realtor. And ideally, if you're working with a broker and a realtor like myself and Brad that have experience working together, that we have good, open, honest conversations, we have a good communication stream, you might be in a little bit better shape, because you don't want to be dealing with one of the many people, and you can admit as much as myself, Brad, that there's people in every industry that shouldn't be there. We do work on a commission basis. I've had an amazing experience working with Brad. Tons customers always come to me saying, whatever what you can, be open with Brad about my situation. We really trust him, always saying great things, but there's a lot of people that shouldn't be in our industry. And if you don't have two people that work well together, you might be getting bad advice from one of those two sides. So you really have to be close in the communication and have people that you trust to work with.
No, it's very true. So with Priyanka, the question for me is my take on the Durham region in the coming months. I still feel like if it continues like this, it's going to be strong. The only thing that I feel changing it is something that is going to eliminate the buyers, because inventory, like listings, have been hitting the market. The problem is they're selling so fast. So you have 100 listings in Durham in any given day. Well, Monday to like Thursday, Friday. I think today there was only like 75 new listings. So it's like on average. So we're dealing with like 600 to 700 new listings in Durham in a week. So we can estimate that. And the inventories are still staying in and around that 1 month worth. And it's just, I don't know, if the buyers, if something happens where buyers stop coming here, then I see that Durham could potentially slow down, or just a huge influx of sellers. So it's going to be one of those things that has to change, because we're not getting any help on the housing starts. Because if you look at the number of housing starts in the Durham region or the Greater Toronto area or even Canada, it's way down, and it's mainly because the cost of lumber is so high. So builders are trying to delay as much as they can, because a 2x4 that used to be $3 or $2 is now like $7. So picture how many 2x4s you need to build a house, and then you have the drywall. Like, you just have so much. So it's going to be the whole supply and demand part. Once that gets balanced out, it will slow down. But I still see a lot of positive for the Durham region as a whole, especially with the expansion of the GO train and Durham Live coming to Pickering, GM announcing that they're going to start with the trucks again at the Oshawa plant. So there's just a lot of positives still coming here that makes me feel it's going to continue that way. The next question is from Carlos. And so this would be more gauged towards Sheldon.
Yes, so I never got any information from my house appraisal from the lender. Is this normal? This is something I really hate. That is, in the vast majority of cases, even though sometimes the client will often pay for it, the lender, and especially if the lender pays for it, they believe that the appraisal is theirs, and they won't share it out. You can ask them for it. Sometimes you might get somebody in there that'll send it over to you somehow through an email, but the lenders feel that they own that. They don't need to share it with you. And that's unfortunately just how it is, but it's always worth asking. I would never expect to proactively get it as them just volunteering to send it over. And if you can't convince them, if they're really strict, to get a copy of your appraisal, then it might just be you might want to ask some particular questions, because typically they'll be at least willing to give you some of that information verbally or through an email. So figure out what you actually want to know about the house. And then appraisals are interesting beasts. There's some things in there that you may not even understand, even to go in and read it. The major things that you're going to find out that you want to know about that house, I think most of the time are going to be through the inspection. But if you can ask some pointed questions, and it's always worth to just ask if they're willing to get you a copy.
Yeah,
but
or at the very least,
just they don't send it out.
Yeah, or just at the very least, hopefully they'll tell you at least what your house appraised at, because I know most people, and it doesn't even matter at that point, but it's just curious to know.
Yeah, that you should never have a problem getting. You should never have a problem getting what was the value of my home. And 99.9% of the time, which is a good point we should touch on, the house comes in at exactly the purchase price. Because the banks assume, well, if this is what the market's willing to pay for it, then this is what it's selling for. However, the appraisers have a responsibility. So again, 99.9% of the time, the purchase price is the exact amount that'll show on the appraisal. They're just making sure in the case of a purchase that it's not outlandishly low or outlandishly high. So if you are ever purchasing a home and the appraisal comes in higher or lower, there is definitely something to take a look at. It doesn't mean you should walk away from the deal, but it definitely means you should step back, question, understand why, because there might be something there that's a huge benefit or potentially something you want to reconsider. I am going to ask you a quick question actually here really fast here, Brad.
Sure.
So with this type of market where the house, because I have clients ask me this, I've wondered it myself, and you only got, I mean, I've been trying to find a home for my mother, and you know, as soon as you find out that it's listed, it's like within a day or two, he's like, you call them and it's sold. So like, obviously, you know, when you really want something nowadays, we have to be people of action. We got to make executive decisions. You can't really dawdle in this market. You have to know what you want. What is some advice that you have around? I mean, obviously, like I said, you want to be somebody that's going to take that quick action. What is some other advice? How can they quickly make the assessments? I mean, obviously, having a conversation earlier with you to understand some of the stuff you mentioned earlier. Do they need to be got by a GO train? What are some of the wants and needs they have? Because you do need to be quickly acting these days. You don't have days or weeks to sit around and ponder whether this is the house for you, right?
No, it's true. And that's where it's like starting early. You can educate yourself with the market. And then I know it sucks to say this, but in markets like this, missing out on your first view is actually a blessing in disguise because it can get you to appreciate how competitive that the market actually is. And then the more you look into homes, like, so I deal a lot with people moving to Durham that are first-time home buyers, we'll call it. And so they've never purchased a home. The fact of going in firm with no conditions, so no finance, no home inspection, is very scary. So on the first few offers, typically, there's the condition of finance, condition of home inspection. And the first showing, I always explain, I'm not here to like sell you this house and give you the features and the benefits. You just have to walk in and see if you like the house. I'm going to try and look for the things that could be major issues, like the windows, the roof, the furnace, the air conditioner, cracks in the foundation, or water leaks in the ceiling. So I'm trying my best to help eliminate a lot of the uncertainty when it comes to the condition or quality of the home. I can't check everything, and I'm not going to say I'm to the same level as a home inspector. I'm not, but I try and eliminate a lot of these things so that it's a little easier. And so it's just following the market. And then, so the more you view a home, the more you can see what you like and what you don't like. And you can notice it very easily, like whether it's a number of bathrooms in a home, or you need one bedroom that's on a main floor, or you need a basement apartment. At first, your search might be like really broad. And it's my job to try and make eliminations, to eliminate property. So people send me a property and I can quickly point out whether A, do you have a chance with price point? B, is it going to suit your lifestyle and what you're looking for? And C, first of all, is it an area that's good? Or are there any other things? Durham has these big not wind turbines, but hydro towers, like these huge metal ones that pretty much go from Niagara Falls right through Durham. And some people don't close to them, or train tracks. So like a lot of these things that I know to look for, because a lot of people don't necessarily like those things. And the good thing here, and I don't know what it's like in Halifax, is for the most part, there's offer holdback. So they might list it on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and they're not going to view offers until the Tuesday or Wednesday, unless it's like a preemptive offer or really.
Is that because they're waiting for more to come in? They want more?
So that's technically the idea behind it. But why it actually started was because homes were selling so fast. And just like you trying to find a home for your mother, if you're not there to look at it day one on the market, you run the risk of it selling super fast. And so when the market starts going from like balance to crazy, you'll see homes that are good and priced well, they would sell in a day. So by holding off 5 or 6 days, it gets people the opportunity to go and see the house. And there's people who come from out of town, or they work crazy hours during the weekend. They're only available on weekends. Well, if you can only view homes on weekends and they're not doing these offer holdbacks, then you're not going to be able to see a lot of these homes because they're going to sell the first or second day on the market.
Interesting. That's a lot of pressure on a realtor to find that right home in general, but even especially in this market, there's so many decisions that you have to that you have to help them make and get in at that right amount. I'm glad I
Yeah.
don't have your pressure, but that just really, I mean, I think now is a more important time than any to have a realtor that you trust is really looking out for you, that really understands how to do their job. And I think just even a lot of the information you've shared and some of the above and beyond that I've seen you do, it's the biggest purchase of your life. You have to have champions in your corner.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's a lot of good realtors out there, but it's just you run the risk of not dealing with them. And that can be a problem. If you're out there for yourself, it's going to be hard because at the end of the day, you're going to have people that are trusting you. And if you're not doing right by them, that's hard because there's people that, sometimes they do grossly overpay for homes in this market. And I don't know, it's nothing that I can comment on because they weren't my, and they got a home, but there's who have that buyer's remorse right now, and with firm offers, there's not much you can do with that. Like, if you're on the hook for that house.
Well, just a reminder to everyone, there's no bad questions. If you have any more remaining questions as we close this out, please fire them up. Any questions of any kind are good. All great questions so far. And if you don't want to post it up now, feel free to. Thank you, Priyanka. Feel free to send Brad or I an email. Remember, we've got our information posted up there. We deal with mortgages right across Canada, so anywhere dealing with, if you want to clarify the different regions that you're serving, Brad, so that people know where your expertise lies.
Yeah, pretty much is the Durham region. That's my main. Like, I've sold homes all over the Greater Toronto area, but I try and focus in on Durham now because I'm a lot of showings out there, and when you take a day to just go somewhere far away, it's not always the
and
best.
for those moving into Ontario that don't know, so what is the Durham region? Is
Durham?
This...
Yeah, so the Durham region is to the east of Toronto. So you have Pickering, which is the closest city in Durham to Toronto. You're about 30 minutes or via GO train to Union Station. And then you have Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa. So those are the main areas that have a GO train line that's like a direct line, the Lakeshore East line. So you can live in Oshawa, Whitby, Ajax, or Pickering, and you can commute to Union Station. So it's commutable. So yeah, it's on the east end of Toronto. And yeah, it runs pretty much, it includes areas like Bowmanville and Scugog. Like, it's a big geographical area, and it's only really the southern section of it that's actually been developed.
So there's a lot of beautiful areas out there. You still have access to the city. Especially during COVID, you're out of kind of that, I guess, population density, and you're in a nice, it's not rural, it's still suburban, it's still close. You still have access to a lot of amenities, and you mentioned that the GO train is extending out there. I think we get another question there for you, Brad.
So this one here, Priyanka, we're trying. we've been looking. We're trying. And then this one here is from Carlos. Do I see the house values going up in Pickering region if the nuclear plant is decommissioned in 5 years or so? It could potentially, because a lot of people are skipping over Pickering when they're looking to move to the Durham region. But the issue with that is now you run the risk of, is it going to be decommissioned properly? And you have areas like Port Hope that had a decommissioned power plant, and they had to have a municipal or federal, I'm not sure exactly, step in and kind of help with home values along the flight path, we'll call it, which is the trucks carrying the nuclear waste that's been sitting there for years and years and years off site, because it's just, scares the crap out of people that there's nuclear waste driving right past this, like, close proximity to houses. So I don't know if it's going to have a huge impact, but it might. It might, but that land is going to be like that for a very long time because it's been nuclear waste for so long.
Well, and again, I'll just point out that it's great to have a realtor that really understands the deeper details of the area. I mean, if anyone's been here since the beginning of the session, you hear Brad, when you consider the most variables in life, no matter what you're doing, certainly for buying a home, you're able to put those variables into the equation of your decision of what's going to make the most sense, and those that can help you, see those variables. clearly are the ones you want to have in your corner. So if you're considering any changes, purchasing a home, refinancing, like we've said many times, feel free to say hi, fire over a question. I don't know if my phone number is up there as well. You guys can text. We're doing business right across the country, whether you're moving in or out of Ontario. Brad's specializing realty in the Durham region, and hopefully we'll have another live session someday soon.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. No, that's good. All of your details are in the description of the actual live. When this gets posted to the YouTube channel and on Facebook and all that kind of stuff, it will be in the description as well. So yeah, no, thanks a lot, Sheldon. It was good. I figured this was a great time to have you on here because these mortgage changes were so fresh. And yeah, with the way the market's been going, figured we could do a quick little update.
Timely live session, and I appreciate getting to meet with you again.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for watching.
Talk soon.
Bye.